So I wanted to come back a little bit to propane. Now, if propane is being used as the fuel gas for welding and cutting, then our oxy-fuel rules apply. However, where we oftentimes come across propane is not with oxy-fuel. It's powering a forklift or powering a heater on a construction site, a salamander. So Oregon OSHA has a separate rule governing propane when used outside of oxy-fuel, but there's some important points that you wanted to cover when it comes to propane and propane cylinders.
It's important to know that propane is a product that's heavier than air, number one. And leaks of propane can settle low. It's important that they're doing the leak checking on propane. Propane has an odor in it, and by the way, oxygen does not have an odor.
Right.
Okay, that's the one product. Oh, I've had someone say to me, oh, I'll smell the product if it's leaking. No, not with oxygen you won't. I'm sorry. Acetylene has an odor to it. Propane has an odor to it. And you would notice an odor with a fairly consistent leak in a cylinder. But things to remember with propane that are in and out of the fuel gas rule are amounts of propane that can be stored inside a building.
Right.
Only 300 pounds of propane, whether the cylinders are full or empty, it counts as a full cylinder. So the cylinders that are not on forklifts, not in use, they need to make sure they're not exceeding that amount of weight. So if you have 33-pound propane cylinders, you just got to do the math of when you exceed 300. The next thing to mention is that propane cylinders, when they're refilled, can only be refilled if they're in current, what we call test state. A propane cylinder, when it's manufactured, is good for 12 years from the date of manufacture. That's stamped on the collar.
Right.
Many times of a propane cylinder, it'll have a collar above the cylinder, whereas we have markings stamped on the high pressure cylinders right on the shoulder of the cylinder.
Right.
The propane cylinder will have it up on the collar many times. And those markings will depict the manufacturer, the serial number, the dot number of the cylinder, and also the year of manufacture. So 12 years, it's good. After 12 years, every 5 years, that cylinder has to go through minimally, a visual requalification process by an approved facility that is allowed to do that inspection. And then they will put what's called a RIN number, R-I-N, identification number, on the cylinder, which tells you it's been done. If when you inspect that propane cylinder, it's not there, that cylinder never should have been refilled. And there's some questions to ask: was it refilled, how recently, etc., to show that they refilled it. The owner of the cylinder had it refilled, even if they take it to a gas station and have it refilled there. Sometimes they'll do it on their own site, refilling on site. So that must be current, that RIN number. And that could be an alleged violation. And by the way, those rules, that you won't find that rule, you'll find that rule in the propane rule, Division 2 for liquefied petroleum gas. Also, if you are going to be addressing a propane cylinder used on a forklift, we have a rule in the forklift rules that refers to NFPA.
Yeah, NFPA 58 standard.
58 standard. And it's an older year on that rule, but it'll talk about that. And that's where you draw your alleged violation from, is the vertical rule on the propane for forklifts.
Right. Because it's outside of oxy-fuel.
Right. Of course, with what we've talked about so far, no smoking, obviously. Propane is a heavy gas, it's flammable, no open flame, no source of ignition around propane. So when you walk in the plant, you're watching around, you see that forklift operator go humming by you, and he's got that cigarette sticking out of his whatever. We don't worry about whether it's a Marlboro or not, or a Camel. What we're concerned about is it's an open flame in and around propane. Okay. The other thing that's very important in propane, and we'll talk about it in more detail over at a forklift here we have, but is the mounting and positioning of a forklift cylinder on a forklift, and we'll show that here shortly.
And let's describe what Tom is talking about here. Please notice the pressure relief valve on this cylinder. It's near the 12 or 1 p.m. position and has a blue rain cap on it. And as you can see at the bottom, when the positioning pin is aligned with the hole in the collar, this ensures the relief valve is in the proper position and in direct communication with the vapor space inside that cylinder. This situation was discovered during an Oregon OSHA inspection. This cylinder was improperly positioned due to a shortened fuel hose. You'll notice the positioning pin is not aligned with the hole in the collar, resulting in the pressure relief valve not being in the proper 12 or 1 p.m. position. This can be a dangerous situation as the relief valve would not operate correctly if in communication with the liquid and not the vapor space of the cylinder. This shows the cylinder not engaged with the positioning pin. The purpose of the positioning pin is to ensure the pressure relief valve is in direct communication with the vapor space. The relief valve should be near the 12 o'clock position and equipped with a rain cap.
We also, if I want to make sure I share this with everyone, when I'm at a site doing an inspection and they fill their own, they might have an on-site 500-gallon tank with propane. I want to make sure they train everybody the same. We don't have a rule for that per se, but it doesn't mean you don't have a hazard letter. And through asking the right questions, how are they filling the propane cylinders? Does everybody do it when you do your interviews? Are they all doing, have them describe to you how they do it from the point of shutdown of the forklift to hooking it up and everything to see that everyone's consistent. I always recommend they have a set of filling instructions. They laminate those instructions. They hang them at the bulk tank. They're available there for the operator who might have been trained by somebody 5 years ago to refresh themselves in the proper procedure in the filling process of that propane cylinder. I also have my own suggestions when you go out to an AM/PM, a gas station kind of thing. I'm not advertising for AM/PM, by the way, where they fill propane cylinders on site. You'll find many times there the propane tank was put in by a company that now doesn't currently supply them because that product pricing changes quite frequently with it, and they change suppliers of propane. But training, how are those employees, which are many times high turnover rate employees, that are they all getting trained and all getting trained appropriately? That's very important to look at. Also looking at PPE. Are they protecting their eyes, their hands? Because propane will not cause the same burn as a refrigerated liquid cylinder will, as severe, but it still will burn. And if it gets in the eye, that burn could be a serious burn compared to just an ouch feeling that I would definitely get and redness from a burn from propane on my skin. So it's important to be wearing the right personal protective equipment. And then also at the fill stations, you want to make sure, again, there's fill instructions there, the PPE is there, they don't let customers hang around the station and keep smoking away to at least 20 feet. And also the canopies I see are built around the various fill areas at these different facilities are low, and they have very sharp edges. And I had an issue with a potential serious cut hazard to an employee because they would duck out the side of the area and go under the canopy and could strike their head and get a serious cut that would result in stitches. So those are things to look for.
As we close, let's review a few other important factors relating to propane. Bulk propane tanks must have a legible marking, usually a data plate like you see in the upper right, listing important information about the tank. And depending on its size, it must be properly set back from buildings, as you see in Table H23. These distances from buildings do not apply to DOT cylinders. This is an example of a bulk tank located too close to a building. One reason for the proper spacing of tanks is due to ensuring an adequate distance when removing the liquid propane. The Chemical Safety Board's investigation of a tragedy involving the process of removing liquid propane can be viewed at their website. Please look for Half an Hour to Tragedy in their video room. Propane cylinders must be secure and set on firm and dry foundations. The two pictures you see at the top show the corrosion that formed on a cylinder that was sitting on bark dust. Several years ago, the industry installed overfilling prevention devices, or OPDs, on all 4 to 40-pound propane cylinders used for vapor service. A good example of this is the 20-pound cylinder for propane barbecue grills. These must be equipped with OPDs, and you'll know it by the triangular-shaped hand wheel at the service valve. Carbon monoxide can be a deadly byproduct of poorly running engines, fueled by propane. Please be sure any internal combustion engines fueled by propane are regularly inspected and serviced. This Fatality Investigation Report describes an Oregon OSHA investigation in Redmond, Oregon, when an employee was overcome by carbon monoxide when running this propane-powered floor buffer. And lastly, it was a prior version of the National Fire Protection Association's Liquefied Petroleum Gas Code, NFPA 58, that OSHA based its current standard on. It is recommended to also follow the most current NFPA 58 standard for the safe handling and use of propane. Thank you.